Saturday night, right before the Florida State-Florida game, that Gus Malzahn would be resigning at UCF and going to Florida State to become Mike Norvell's new offensive coordinator. And this announcement definitely comes as a surprise to some degree, more in terms of the timing of it. But if you really look down and think about this hire more logistically, the hire makes sense for a number of different reasons. And I'm definitely in favor of this hire. I think it's a really strong hire for Mike Norvell and somebody that he desperately needed to bring in if he wants to bring back this program to where they were 2 seasons ago. And most importantly, really get the recruiting back on track and start winning some football games. Now, right now, Florida State has essentially had to clean house in terms of the assistants there, and their offensive coordinator before was Alex Atkins, and he didn't really do anything at all whatsoever. And when you have a quarterback like DJ, who could barely make a basic pass this year, it's just you just kind of have to ask yourself, at one point are you going to finally make a move and do something different here? So they went with the slam dunk hire with Gus Malzahn. Now, if you look at his record over the past 4 seasons at UCF, his first 2 seasons there, 18-9. And then it kind of slips down from there, being 10-15 over the next 2 seasons, 4-8 this season, and losing his last 7 out of 8. So you can kind of see the trend going downward too. But at the same time, defending Gus, I would argue one of the downsides to a job such as UCF is the athletic budget simply wasn't there, and the boosters weren't getting fully behind the program in general. So it just seems like to me that Gus is probably sitting there saying to himself, hey, I just fired Ted Roof this season. I'm ready to be on the ropes because I'm 4-8. I brought in a really excellent quarterback in KJ Jefferson, and that fell flat. I'm not gonna have RJ Harvey. So you're kind of sitting there saying to yourself, okay, I'm gonna have to completely reconfigure this program. I'm about to turn 60. It probably seems like it's a little bit more stress than what it's worth, considering that you have a relationship with Mike Norvell when they were co-offensive coordinators at Tulsa. So their relationship goes way back too. And also, nothing against the Big 12. I've had guests on the show who cover the Big 12. However, there's a big difference between playing Big 12 football versus playing ACC football. And clearly, even though Gus has led UCF to three bowl games out of the 4 years he was there, there is a huge difference, and you definitely saw that in terms of their overall recruiting. Because even if you look at their recruiting over the past couple seasons, they were 34th in 2024, 38th in 2023, and 37th in 2022. So I would argue Gus could be sitting there saying to himself, hey, in terms of high school recruiting, that could possibly be the peak of what I can accomplish here. Because at the same time, you could argue that from a transfer portal perspective, hey, he was 15th in 2022. And he was 20th in 2024 in terms of that recruiting class and in terms of that transfer portal class. And he understands what it takes to recruit at a very strong level within the Southeast. Now, granted, I'd say in the past couple of years, I would argue he's probably more of a decent recruiter, but at the same time, he understands what it takes to win down there. I mean, you can talk about him winning a national title as an offensive coordinator at Auburn, and then back in 2023, he led them to the BCS national championship game and ultimately lost to Florida State in the Rose Bowl. So it goes to show, like, yes, there are a lot of things that are going into play here, and we can talk about his previous history. Back in 2006 under Houston Nutt, he was an offensive coordinator there for a season, and they had a little bit of falling out because Houston Nutt kind of wanted to go with more of the run heavy sort of offense, and Gus was like, hey, I'm more of the no huddle offense, explosive players, air raid sort of situation. So eventually moves on to Tulsa, and then he goes to Auburn. Then he coaches for a year at Arkansas State, coaches 8 seasons at Auburn, and then 4 at UCF. So his track record, it's there. And for those of you who don't watch the show, I was hyping up UCF pretty heavily earlier in the season, and that prediction definitely fell flat, needless to say, after they lost their last 7 out of 8. And to me, the turning point of their season was when UCF lost to Colorado. When Colorado whooped UCF's ass, to me, that was kind of the the turning point in terms of them really kind of piecing this together too. And even watching the game versus Utah, the energy felt different in general, and it just wasn't all the way there for UCF. But it should be interesting in terms of who they go after right now. Rumor mill says Jamie Chadwell is going to be the most likely candidate, but we'll see what happens there. But in terms of Gus's fit at Florida State, I really like this fit for a number of reasons. The only two hesitations I have in terms of this hire is I look back and think to myself, who are the past quarterbacks that Gus has had? You can talk about Cam Newton back in 2010, 2013 when they had Nick Marshall, and then you can talk about how they had KJ Jefferson too. And all of these quarterbacks have a very specific skill set in order for them to win. And to me, that's the one thing that kind of comes to mind in terms of bringing in somebody like Malzahn is over the past 20 years as being a head coach. One of the things I kind of ask myself is to what extent can he evolve? And I think if he's going to help Mike Norvell turn around this Florida State offense, he's going to have to be a little bit more adaptable. And I think a lot of the criticism that he's gotten or what has happened in terms of this role is the fact that he sometimes he hasn't been able to be as adaptable as you would like. And perhaps we could even talk about, when you get a $21 million buyout from Auburn, yeah, you can be a little bit more flexible in saying, you know what, this whole head coaching thing isn't working. I'm not getting the support I really need. How about going up to Florida State where they're putting a ton of money into their program and hopefully being able to help my buddy Mike Norvell turn this around, which makes all the real sense in the world, considering the general upgrade that you have in terms of conference play. But at the same time, this is such a historical falling from grace in terms of being undefeated in the last season to now going 2-10. I think there's a lot of pressure obviously going to be on Malzahn in general, and definitely the power struggle there should be a fascinating aspect of it too. Maybe even similar in the sense of Sam Pittman and Bobby Petrino, in the sense of if Florida State were to struggle, are people going to be calling for them to hire Gus? It's certainly possible. I mean, he's won just about everywhere that he's gone. I mean, even at Auburn, I mean, the writing was on the wall in terms of him getting fired there, but he is consistently getting his teams, 7-8 wins in a bowl game. And even in the SEC, he took them to a national championship game, and he took them to an SEC title as recently as 2017 or 2018. So it's not like he hasn't accomplished anything in 10, 15 years. It's just that his staffing hires are currently questionable in terms of, we could talk about Ted Rufus defenses all day, but at the end of the day, what this really comes down to in terms of Gus Malzahn coming to Florida State is he has a very strong grasp in terms of what it's like recruiting in the Southeast. He has a winning pedigree, not only at Arkansas State, but you can talk about his success at Arkansas, Tulsa, Auburn, and at least for the first 3 seasons at UCF. And you can talk about just the general relationship that they have and being able to help jumpstart this recruiting process again, because now in this age of college football, people can commit and decommit anytime they want. So I'm sure recruits were logically sitting there saying to themselves, hey, this team is 2-10. This team sucks. Why not open up my commit? Why not decommit and just kind of see what's out there? And that's what we're going to be seeing from Florida State, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. I'm intrigued in terms of how many of those kids that they can actually keep versus how much they're going to have to pivot and kind of get more players that kind of fit Malzahn's scheme in terms of having a really strong athletic quarterback who can throw the ball, but also has the capability to be a running threat in terms of being physically dominant and being able to shut off tackles. You're going to have to get some receivers who are explosive and being able to create some separation. And I think your offensive line is going to have to be a little bit more athletic and be able to pass protect a hell of a lot better than they did this season, because Florida State was completely abysmal when it comes to protecting DJ. Now, granted, he obviously didn't play well either, but at the same time, the protection has to be there for them to really have any realistic shot at coming back in the ACC and being stronger than where they are now. Because, I mean, down in Tallahassee, I mean, you really can't get much worse than this. Especially, Florida had a very dominant, impressive performance against Florida State to cap off the season too. So let me know in the comments what you think about this hire. But from my perspective, I think this is a great fit.